All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started. It's 1 minute after, so there might be some more that pop in, but uh, for sake of time, we'll start. I hopefully can all see my screen. Oops, sorry, wrong button. We're going to talk about the InBody results that you guys possibly did when you do InBody scans. That way you guys can have this more so for posterity. We can record this and then people can always reference it so they can go back and check to see what their body composition means. But today we're going to focus on the results that come on that sheet that you do with your scan. But before we jump into that, I'm just going to give a quick refresher on what is body composition? Why do we measure it? Why is it practical? And then again, how to interpret your results at the end. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat or you can speak up. I probably won't see the chat questions till the end. So if it's applicable to what we're talking about, you can unmute yourself and ask away and interrupt me. But what is body composition? It's basically the relative amount of mass, fat mass versus lean mass, or what we would call usually muscle mass or lean body tissue. So it's going to be comprised of all things muscle, bone, water, and organ tissue. So basically your entire body broken out into different components. And body fat being a big factor when we do body composition scans is definitely essential in the body. The body needs fat. Too low of fat can be detrimental. We also know too much fat can be bad, but fat in itself is not bad. It is necessary for the body. Pretty much every major organ requires the use of fat for energy or for some sort of protection. All of our muscles can use fat. Our central nervous system definitely relies on fat to make those connections. It's part of the protective border around all of our cells and everything. So we do need fat. If you look at the bottom here, women need a little bit more essential fat than men, and that is because of the reproductive abilities that we have and all the extra fat requirements that those take into effect and the hormones we need to produce. So that's why women have a little leeway on how much essential fat we need. Then there's the storage fat. And that's also can be helpful because it provides energy. So we do store excess calories in the form of fat, and we can then convert that back into energy when the body needs it to do activity or whatever it might need, or even some cellular systems. But too much of it, too much fat stored can also be detrimental, which we'll talk about. And then down here, you can kind of see the recommendations for how much excess fat maybe one should have. So if you combine these two percentages together, that's closer to how much fat generally will be in the body, give or take. And why do we evaluate this? Why do we do it for stride? One, because it can give us indications of health risks. And two, it can also be sort of a motivation for behavior change to help us get to better health. And for some, like an athlete, will do it to help their performance and help them identify areas where they need to be and also help them identify where they want their body to be to give them their best performance opportunity. On the concerning side of body composition, we do this for stride because we want to know how healthy you are and if you're at risk for any elevated conditions as part of our employee wellness program. So people with excessive body fat, if we identify that in a body composition scan, are likely to be at higher risk for some sort of cardiovascular disease or high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and even certain cancers are now starting to be linked to excessive body fat. On the reverse, even if your body fat's too low, that can also be detrimental to your health. I talked about how important it is for women's fertility, so it can cause reproductive issues and infertility if it's too low. Circulatory issues can become a concern, immune disorders, eating disorders. There's other health issues and complications that can arise from having too low of fat as well. And then, of course, not just focusing on the fat, but we also want to know how strong and how much muscle the body has because we know muscle supports our posture, supports certain systems that work well, really is the engine to our metabolism, reduces our risk for fractures and breaks if we have a good amount of muscle mass to support the body and keep it strong. And so too little of lean mass is going to obviously increase your risk for all these sorts of breaks and fractures and osteoporosis or muscle wasting. So there's lots of things to glean from a body composition scan. Other than that, you might have too much fat. There are different ways to assess a BMI, or excuse me, body composition. BMI being the most common, and that's just a height and weight formula. So you'd put it into a formula, and based on how tall you are and how much you weigh, it will predict where you are on the body fat spectrum: underweight, normal, overweight, or obese. It's a nice, easy formula to use for the general population. It becomes inaccurate with the more muscle mass you have. So if you're someone who's maybe husky but has a good deal of muscle mass, it probably overestimates for you. Likewise, if you're someone who's really fit but has a lot of muscle mass, it's going to overestimate for you. Or if you're skinny and don't have a lot of muscle mass, it's going to be inaccurate as well. So, but for the general population, it's the best we have for a mass viewing of body composition. Waist to hip ratios, skin folds, underwater weighing can also be helpful. They require a little bit more equipment and precision from the person doing the testing. So while they can be used, they're sometimes just not preferred by the patient or the facilitator. Air displacement, similar to underwater weighing, but that can be difficult just because it takes a lot of coaching to the individual and what they need to do to get rid of all the air in their body and such. We use the InBody right now, and that uses bioelectrical impedance. So that is basically sending an electric current through the body when you stand on the bottom of that scale. You won't feel it, but what it does is goes through the water in your body, and your muscle is where the water is stored. So when it runs into fat, it's blocked because fat doesn't store water, and therefore it doesn't conduct electricity. But otherwise, when it's going through the muscle and such, that current will keep going, and that's how it measures things. And the best way to do it is a DEXA scan, but it's super expensive, and we don't generally do that. And so right now, the InBody is probably our most accurate option we have. So hence why we do it. When you come in to do your InBody scan, if you've never done one before, you basically stand on this big oversized scale, bare feet. That way the pulse can go up through your soles, and you hang on to some handles, and it's got little electro pads on the finger handles as well. You just stand still for about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and it puts the pulse through your body. Again, you don't feel anything, but it's doing its measurements, and then when it's done, it will print out your report sheet, and that's what we're going to go over today. So when you get your sheet, it will look like this little sheet over here on the right. It'll have your ID up top. Usually it's your birth date or something that can identify you. So if you'd ever come back and do this scan, you can compare, and the machine will compare for you and your metrics for the day. The first box is going to be your water and your weight composition. So over here on the far right is your total weight, and then it breaks it down. So we'll start at the top with your water. You have intracellular and extracellular water. Intra means inside, so this is the amount of water inside your cells, and of course, extra is outside of the cells. We definitely want water inside our cells, right? So it can be used. Ideally, you want almost double intracellular to extracellular water. And in general, total body water, we want almost 50 to 60% of it to be our weight, if that makes sense. So if your extracellular water is creeping up to match your intracellular water, there's some issues going on there. That means water is escaping the cells for some reason. It could be an inflammation marker or some sort of nutrition deficit or something. And ideally, if your weight isn't 50%, 60% water, then you likely have excess weight to get rid of. The third row is dry lean mass, and that's going to be everything that's not muscle or fat, right? Because muscle is where your water is stored, so that's going to be similar to your total body water. So this is going to be things like bone and tissue, right? That's not muscle, water, or fat. And then what's left over is just pounds of fat. So that's kind of a breakdown of your body composition. The next section goes to your muscle and fat analysis. So the top bar just shows your weight for the day. And then there's these little percentiles at the top of the row. And those are based on someone your age and your height. So it's going to fluctuate for every person that steps on the scale. Ideally, you'd like to be around that 100th percentile, right? For most of these markers. So this person's, as you can see, at 163 pounds is about the 110th percentile. Next is skeletal muscle mass. This person has about 87.5 pounds of skeletal muscle mass, which puts him at about the 125th percentile. So in this case, that's a good thing. He has more muscle than the body would recommend for someone his age and height, which can be a good thing. Extra muscle is certainly not something to frown upon. And on the fat side of things, he's got pretty low fat mass. He's got 13 pounds, which puts him at about the 45th percentile. So pretty lean individual on this particular scan. But if you keep your sheets from previous years, the trending sheet doesn't necessarily show this at the bottom, but if you look, this is a great place to identify where you're seeing those gains and losses in weight. So you can see, wow, am I really putting on more pounds of muscle or not right here? Maybe my last scan said 85 pounds and now I have 87.5. Or maybe I had 15 pounds of fat and now I have 13 pounds of fat. So if you keep your sheets, that can be helpful because these numbers aren't going to necessarily show on the trend, but you can compare them from sheet to sheet. The next one is going to be the obesity analysis. So BMI, like I talked about, is just a height and weight formula. Anything in this gray area between 18.5 and 25 is considered normal. When you get above 25, it's considered overweight. And when you get above 30, it's considered obesity. But again, it's not accurate for someone who has a lot of muscle. And in this example, this person does have quite a bit of muscle, and it shows him close to 25, which is good, but anything, like I said, above 25 starts to be overweight, and you think, oh, this person's almost overweight, but his percent body fat is actually super low, 8%. So this person has a lot of muscle, which throws off his BMI score. So not a good measurement for him, whereas percent body fat is a good measurement of what his body composition looks like. So if you remember back to the last slides, I have it down here again. We have essential fat and then the extra fat that we need, the storage fat and stuff, and you can kind of see where you might fall if you're a man or a woman on where it would be. Ideally average, I would say this row here is where you want to try to fall into. Women, again, have that extra increase in fat storage for reproductive purposes and such and hormones. So we always have a little bit higher percentages we're allotted. But this is a good thing to look at versus BMI, especially if you have a lot of muscle. All right, then it breaks it down into where all that muscle is stored in the body. So this is your lean segmental analysis. So the top bar going across is pounds. So you can see the arms have about 9 pounds of muscle apiece. And then the bottom bar is going to be your percentile. So this person is about the 120th percentile for both their upper body arm strength. Ideally, all of your strength should be above 100%. That means you're strong enough to support the weight of that limb. Some people come in and their core percentile might be like below 90%, maybe in the 80th percentile, but everything else looks pretty strong. That person might suffer from back pain just because their core muscles aren't strong enough and there's a lot of weight influencing and impacting that area. Similarly, women in particular seem to have lower body strength. They might be in the low 80s or lower, where everything else is really strong, and they might suffer from hip or knee problems. And that's just because there's not enough strength in the lower body to support all the weight they're carrying in those limbs and the body. So that can be insightful if you're someone who's working out or starting to work out or experiencing issues with joint pain or hip pain, knee pain, things like that. See if any of your muscles are underdeveloped and if you need to, develop additional exercises into your workout plan or something to bring that strength up. Traditionally, most of us aren't working out a lot to make exercise it, but just our everyday activities, like if, a woman, maybe that she's a mom and she's got kids and she's putting groceries and doing all the laundry, that's a lot of upper body exercises, and it's just not something she thinks about to be adding in extra lower body exercises. So she might have an underdeveloped lower body or something. But the main thing here is to shoot for muscle balance. So if I would draw a line to connect the dots of my bars, I'd like it to form as much of an I as possible and not any sort of slant or C shape, showing that something doesn't have as much strength as it should. All right, the next section is going to be your water analysis. This is, if you remember back at the top, extracellular water, so the water outside of our cells compared to all the water we have in our body. And we like this number about 0.38, between 0.36 and 0.39. Just to show how well our body is hydrated and how much of that is being kept in the cells to be used and be useful. Too low obviously means the body's likely dehydrated. or it can mean we just have a lot of muscle mass, which sometimes is the case, but for most of us coming in for the scans, it's because we're dehydrated. But if it gets to be up in the fours, that tends to be an inflammation marker, because that means that there's water going to a spot somewhere in the body for healing, right? And the blood is going a specific place because there's some inflammation going on and the body is responding to try to fix that. Can also be a sign of fluid retention too. And so the scan does track this because when people start to track how they're losing weight, this is a good indication to see if it's water weight that's being lost or if it truly is muscle or fat. So this is one of the things that does trend. So here's that trend sheet at the bottom. So each scan you come, you'll see a comparison. Here's the dates of the scans across the bottom. You can see how their weight is changing. If we say we jump ahead to the third scan, we can see this person's lost about a pound. And most of that was, muscle, a slight decrease in fat, but a little change in water. So overall, versus, something over here, you might see, oh, this person didn't lose any weight, but maybe they gained a lot of muscle and lost fat. So overall, that's a good thing, even though the scale shows no change or maybe even an increase. So the trends can become useful over time by one, looking at how your muscle mass is changing and hopefully it's going up. Hopefully your percent fat is going down, and hopefully your water weight is staying pretty even keel if it's close to that 0.38 range. On the right side of the sheet is a little breakdown of what the machine would like you to be at. So over here, it would show you how much weight it wants you to lose and how much muscle it wants you to gain. Most of these are pretty overestimated, just because it wants you to get at that perfect 100 column. And a lot of times that sacrifices that excess muscle that we have, which is a good thing for many of us. So usually it's probably not quite as much as the machine says that I would recommend, just because I want to make sure you maintain that muscle. Segmental fat is where your fat is stored in the limbs. So you can see where you have fat in your arms, trunk, and legs. And then your basal metabolic rate down here is your resting metabolism. And that's how many calories your body needs every day at minimum to maintain the muscle that you currently have. So if you're someone who doesn't work out and you barely do anything on the job, you still need to be eating as many calories just to keep the muscle you have. But if you're someone who's fairly active in your day, or you're even working out, or trying to gain muscle, you need to be eating more than this every day to give your body and your metabolism and your muscle permission to grow and work well. So don't starve yourself as a form of weight loss. Fuel your body to help you build muscle, which then in return, that muscle will, destroy the fat and rev up that metabolism engine. This is not what our sheet looks like, but it does still give you a score for visceral fat. This particular one says 11.3. Visceral fat is the deep internal fat around your organs, not the fluffy stuff we pinch. The more dangerous stuff, because it puts stress on those organs like the heart and lungs. It can cause high blood pressure and different types of heart disease if this gets high. So the goal is to keep it below 10. When it gets to be above 20, it's considered high risk for heart disease and cardiovascular events. So this is also something that you can keep an eye on over time to see if that trend or that number changes based on any changes you might have made to your lifestyle. So, actions you can use from your results report. One, take a look at it and see how is your muscle mass? Should I be putting on more muscle to help my body? What are my goals? And, do I need more muscle to help me meet those goals, or what do I need to do? Am I dehydrated? Is my metabolism look healthy? I would say most of us need to be eating at least 1,200 calories. So if your basal metabolism comes in below 1,200, you probably need to add some more muscle mass to get that metabolism back up and running. It probably means your body slowed down a lot, and it's probably going to be hard for you to manage your weight because your metabolism's not working at optimal speed. And then, of course, my big thing to people is to stop judging themselves by the weight on the scale and more so be in tune with what's happening on the inside of their bodies. The number doesn't necessarily mean anything. You could come in and be 200 pounds of all muscle or 200 pounds of all fat, and walking down the street, you're the same number on the scale, but completely two different people. visually and health wise. So don't get hung up. I know people who get on the scale every day, and that's fine if that's what you do, but don't let that be, the only factor that you consider on if you're healthy or not, because it's definitely more than that, than just the weight. So just a reminder, we have the InBody here at Public Health. If you ever want to do it, it's always available to county employees. We do bring it around at our biometric screenings once a year at all the sites, but you can come and make an appointment here at any time. We have a scheduler on our website at cghealth.com, so you can go on there and find a time and make an appointment. If you have someone from the public or you want to bring a spouse or a child or someone to use it, it's $20. And then any type of rescan that person would have is $10, just because we don't spend as much time going over the results the second and third times and beyond. We also rent this out to employers. We have a few employers in the community who rent it out for their employees for a week or so, periodically, to get benefit from it as well. So there are different options in using it, but as in-county employees, definitely take advantage of it. And like I said, we always come out at least once a year with it to your sites. So don't be afraid of it. So I will stop sharing, and if any of you have questions, I will take them. Otherwise, I'll let you go. Don't see anything in the chat, so.
I have a question.
Okay, go for it, Sandy.
I think I know right where all of my InBody scan results are
Mm-hmm.
at home, not in front of me right now. But what if I get home and see that I'm missing one? Do you have the history of those for us if we're curious or no?
Yes, I believe I can go back. I think I can go back indefinitely. We have up to, I think the machine will save like 25,000 results, and I don't think we're close to that. So at some point it's going to cut me off, but we're not there yet. So as long as I know your ID and the date-ish, I can go back and find them. Yep.
Perfect.
Good question. Okay. If you have other questions, don't feel free, reach out and we can answer them. But I will save this recording to the YouTube channel for Stride. So if you ever need to go back to it, you can reference it there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kelly.